everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be tackling more of the trickier aspect of drawing, and that is feet. Whether you're a beginner artist or more advanced, learning how to draw feet in the correct way is a great way to improve your skill and figure drawing. So now grab your pencils and let's begin. Now firstly, what we want to do is start with the most simplest forms of the foot, and from there we're going to work our way up to more detail until you become a foot specialist. Now whether or not you want that achievement, I'll leave that up to you. Now for the bare bones of the foot on the side view. Here we are just going to start off with two rectangle shapes and a ball to create this L shape. Now that we have that L shape in place, we're going to grab ourselves a hammer and give that bottom rectangle a little tiny knock back. By doing this, it now gives you a strong heel position and gives you an easier visualization of how it's going to curve up to the bottom of the leg. Now if you want to learn how to draw absolutely anything in crazy perspectives like the master Kim Jong-il, we are going to have to practice the most basic forms until you get utterly comfortable, and when you get more comfortable you can start to move in and chisel out more of the details. Now I know this is advice you probably heard from lesson 1, but honestly many eyes want to skip this and get straight to the more complex designs, but taking it back and understanding the foundations and the fundamentals is absolutely key in mastering and overtaking anyone else's ability. Now for us here to take it further, we need to start carving out into the most basic shapes. Now here where we have the bottom rectangle, we want to have it bottom heavy towards the circle shape. Now that you get a basic understanding of this shape, not only will it help you to draw feet, it will also give you a greater understanding on how to draw shoes. Now that's 2 for 1, baby. Now this helps to explain the shape from the top of the foot, but now let's talk about the bottom. From the very bottom of the foot, you want to carve out this wave chunk. This will help to separate and distinguish the two forms from the heel and the rest of the flat of the foot. You can almost kind of visualize this as a small set high heel. And this is where the beauty comes in. If you was to take that small set high heel shape and then position it in many different positions, you can then draw that from as many different angles and any perspective you wish to do so. Just like the few examples here. Now that we've made it to this point and we've got a basic understanding of the shapes we can play around with, let's see how the mechanics work. Now let me just give you some advice at this point that may get me some backlash from the art community, but understanding every tiny little bit of anatomy is not always warranted. If the mechanics look correct, then guess what? They are correct. And also looking at the anatomy more mechanically can really help give you a visualization of how the object is moving through space. And to help with the mechanics of the foot, we are going to separate the bottom rectangle into 3 parts: the heel, the flat, and of course the toes. Now at every point that there is a separation, you want to imagine a small connecting part that allows the individual parts to bend and pivot. A common mistake I've seen so many times is that when people draw feet straight on, there exists no angles, and instead they just draw them flat from the bottom of the foot straight into the shoe shape. When you're looking at the feet straight on, always remember angles. Angles, angles, angles. This is so important. It's so important in fact that playing around with angles in all your anatomy work is a great way to make things look way more dynamic than before. Another key point to remember when drawing the feet is when you're looking at them inwardly, the highest ridge exists on the inner side and then slopes down to the outer. So you basically are creating this tiny mountain shape. Commonly, I've seen people draw it as a straight triangle, which just does not match the realism look of how a foot should be. Now we've made it pretty far dealing with the basic shapes and mechanics from the side view and overhead view. But now let's have a look at the bottom of the foot. Now looking at the foot from the bottom and what we covered earlier, we should have this rectangle shape here. But in reality, the bottom of the foot is shaped more like an old school telephone, with a lot more curves on the outer sides. Now knowing this information here really helps with foreshortening, and it can also save your feet from looking dead flat. Never flatten the sole. Now let's move on to those little piggies. First thing that's really helpful is imagining a sock that separates the big toe from the rest of the toes. Doing this not only helps with the placement, but also cuts up your task of distinguishing shapes a lot more easier because you can focus on one thing at a time. And that is key when it comes to anything, is breaking something down and making it manageable for you to digest the information on how to create that object. Now for the 4 toes, it helps to stack 2 squares on top of each other so you end up with this staircase shape. And as for the big toe, I like to draw it as a spear-like wedge shape protruding out of the flat shape of the foot. And that right there should give you a general basic understanding of the form and mechanics of how the foot is not only assembled but will moved when taught or pivoted around. So with all the understanding of form and mechanics, let's go through some various examples live to see how it works in motion. So let's just go with the foot like the small telephone, the old school telephone. We're going to put it in, but more of an angle. Because once you learn how to draw the shape from any position, then you can put it into any perspective you actually wish from your imagination. So where we have the telephone shape, which we have was like this, we're going to turn it and twist it towards us. So the fat bit of the front of the foot is up here, it comes down, and then we have the heel at the back. And remembering where we had like the high heel shape, it can also help to imagine the shading parts coming in here. And this would be obviously further back like so. So that's just the rough right now, that's just the rough basic shape. Learning the basics always is the key to making anything possible. So if we just keep going with stuff like this, I'll just draw this, the second rectangle we always put in, and draw that coming straight back to the heel. Like so. It doesn't look like much right now, but this is the beauty of art, and that when you start understanding how it all goes, you know how all the pieces fit together. So if I make this into the rectangle shape, we know the toes are coming out here. And with the toes, we've got that spear shape for the big toe. I always like to put the big toe in first, and then the rest seem to naturally fall into place. So if I just put the big toe in, just a rough line, nothing's perfect right now. It's still very sketchy. And then from there, I'm just going to draw the rest in a clump from now, okay? So just a clump with no direction of where anything is going. And from there, I like to divide it again. If I'm unsure, I can also copy this with the spear shape, like this. Just put it anywhere you want these little nuggets, if you will. Like so. And this is why it's so, even though it looks messy now, the mechanics of it all seem correct, okay? So you can make some slight adjustments like around here. I want to curve this up a bit more, get more roundness. Really want to accentuate that curve more, and then have the block heel at the end like this. So you can go over it like a fine tooth cone and start adding more shape. Normally it's good to avoid all loads of straight lines and keep it with a lot more of a curvature kind of thing. And there right now it's been darkened up, but this is just one example from the whole thing, for everything we went through. Starting with the simpler forms really down, and then start carving out the details. Now you can go over this again. I can even set up certain lighting, like make this out of a sculpture, set a lighting at home and get perfect shading, depending on what style you want, super realism or more illustrative or character. You really play around with it, but no matter what you do, the foundation has to go in place. And I know that's boring to hear. I know it can be annoying and disheartening when someone says that, especially for me when I started out doing art, but it is key, and I wish I did listen and just did that at the beginning. So I would have saved a lot more time and progressed a lot quicker. That all being said, let's just draw into another example. Okay, so for this, where we have the rectangle one for the top of the leg, here's a little trick. If you want your foot with the toes almost being compressed down, you can't just go straight down, combine the two, okay? So the circle joint would be there, and then straight down. Then we just put this all into one big rectangle from earlier. And all we're gonna do here is where the heel would be, is add this shape, like that. And already, it's like a cheat code to make it simple, okay? So, but what I mean, with the heel goes in place, then the toes will come out like this. Remember when we spoke earlier in the video about doing it in a sock? This is what I mean, is put all four into one sock, but then this one, the big one, is separate. Just like this, you end up with this kind of shape, okay? It doesn't look like much right now. And all we do is start mixing up, building up on the rectangle shapes, like so. So here needs more of a curve. So with the little toes, I'm just gonna put that more in place and fan it out more, like this. And then it becomes a lot easier to individually pick out the toes you want and then different placements. Like so. And then we follow that rectangle around, put in the heel. Just like so. And that's just another great example of these guidelines. Of how you can draw a foot from a different position, but like again, it stems up for those basic shapes being built upon and worked on. If I was to do this one, but I'm not rushed so fast, I would definitely make these toes maybe a little bit more bigger here, expand them out. But you get the general idea of where this is going. And to divide each toe, you just work it in each one, just like so. We have it, that's just something a bit more animated, a bit more sort of exaggerated in certain areas, but still you get the general gist of it. And you don't have to abide exactly by what I'm doing here. Find out your own way, but play with the basic shapes. That's what I'm trying to stress is play with the fundamental rectangles and not so much the details for now. Like even you can just like shade off and everything else. So yeah, just keep on building up the basics. Let's just go through one more example right now, and then we can sort of conclude out how to do it and how to manipulate each thing. So here, if we start off with what we had with the circle, and then we have the heel coming in, like so. Here, we're gonna have the second rectangle coming down, like this. And let's do it so some of the toes are curling inwards, but then let's have this one, the big one, contacting the floor, okay? So you end up with something like this, just rough for now, for the toes. Here we know the second rectangle comes up, and that's your base form right there. Real simple, there's no details at all. Just putting things in place, now you know where things are gonna sit. And from there, we're just gonna go around it all, like so. Curling here. We have the first one coming in a bit more smaller. And now we can start edging out more details as we go forward. It really is a simple shape once you start understanding all these things. I know the feet can be very intimidating for many artists, but once you start just understanding how it all works, what's this, 30 seconds is it we've been doing this? And already we've got, you know, a shape that looks correct and congruent with everything. And that's just for understanding the basics. Some people who like draw like mecha or robots, you can even leave some shapes like this. If you are going for the skin, remember as points of contact, there are folds of skin similar to clothing. So like here is a point of contact, I'd say. This is the heel, the bone that pops out from the heel. So you can put a bit of shadow on that, okay, like this. If you want a bit more details in it. This is a bit more if your style wants to lean towards this way, but follow your instinct and where you want to go with it as well, because your voice is the key voice that matters when it comes to art. But the voice always comes near the end, not so much at the beginning of creating something. Here from the showing you shading, we know this is a rectangle shape like this. I like to demonstrate that, okay? So I like to show you it's a three-dimensional shape. And because we talked earlier, the inner side, if you can imagine this was twisted, from the inner, this side we can't see, it comes up and it comes across and it slowly slopes down and around. So if it helps, you can draw those guidelines in place. Just come up from that side, there's a little flat on the top, so like this, and then it comes to the side and around. Slowly slopes down and around. That's just to help you understand the three-dimensional form of a thing, so now you can see it from all angles, like we did when we did it like this. So take this shape, twist it around, we'll end up with where it slopes up this side, little top, and slowly slopes off. And then we're ending up with that right here. But from this side, okay? And that's how you see it live and pulled together. Obviously these are very quick demos. I mean, literally that took about I think less than a minute. More time when you have on it, go slower, take your time with it, but I just want to go through all the processes on how you can break it down and repeatedly do any foot from any angle, so you're never stuck on it again. If you finished the tutorial, give yourself a pat on the back, and this is how to draw the foot. If you have any questions, make sure to leave it down in the comment sections, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe and support this channel. It's a one-man team over here, and any support goes a real long way, so we appreciate it. And as always, I have to say a massive thank you to the Patreon team, who are the backbone and give this channel fire to keep producing our tutorial to help individuals and to help the world. And no matter what, you keep creating, keep pushing, and peace.